the Dawgs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
What's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast presented by Omaha Steaks. Josh All with you today, and I've got Kenny Mack from Canada on the show. How's it going,
let's
Kenny?
go, baby. Let's go.
We're coming to you guys here at the end of the week because, one, there's actually a couple just recent news pieces that we haven't covered yet on any of our episodes. We'll just kind of touch on that. Maybe we'll dive into a little bit more of what those mean, and we'll see how things play out over the weekend. We'll talk about that next week. And then after we touch on those news pieces, we are going to look back at the Andrew Berry press conference from earlier in the week, his end-of-season recap, and kind of pull all the little nuggets that we can out of that press conference about, Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski, Myles Garrett, all this stuff that Andrew Berry was asked about, and some of the things he said. It was really interesting. Kenny had listened to it, said, hey, let's talk about that press conference. So I thought that was a good idea. Want to bring that to you guys. So before we dive into it all, if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Please share our stuff on all your socials. We really appreciate getting the podcast out in front of as many people as possible. And if you're listening on audio, on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeart, wherever you're listening, we really appreciate all of our audio listeners. You guys rock. Couldn't do this without you guys, and we couldn't do it without people like Kenny. So let's first just mention some of the recent news before we dive into the press conference. So the other day, Duce Staley confirmed new running backs coach for the Cleveland Browns. Do you have any thoughts on Duce Staley, the hire?
I think we just needed a new. I don't want to give away too much because I know I want to say stuff during the press conference, but It kind of aligns with what Barry was saying about maybe what they were looking for in the future. And I think a new fresh start on offense would be deal for the Browns. It looks like Duce Staley is going to be part of that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, he's been the last two places he's been, Detroit and last year Carolina. He wasn't just the running backs coach; he was also the assistant head coach in both of those organizations. So it just feels like the Browns are bringing in more of this experience, guys that have experience in multiple different roles, and different levels of experience doing different things. So I just think it's all good stuff. The Browns right now, this front office, this coaching staff, they do nothing by accident, nothing by mistake, nothing random. It's all calculated. It's all, best guys for the best fit. And obviously that's what they felt about Duce Staley. So pumped about that hire. Looking forward to seeing what he brings. The other two things, the offensive coordinator, I did an episode earlier in the week talking about Gerard Johnson. He came in, he came out. No, nothing's been hired yet for offensive coordinator. They're still interviewing people. They interviewed, Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson, and then Kellen Moore got the nod as well. So between those two, I mean, I like what you said about Johnson earlier in the week. So I'm kind of stuck on that right now. But Kellen interests me because he can call an offense. I thought he kind of got the raw end of the deal in San Diego, or it's not San Diego, in LA, because it was kind of a lame duck team. Staley didn't get what he needed done there, and it kind of just spiraled down. And I think maybe it was the fresh start. He's got some fresh ideas. He did some all right stuff in Dallas. He knows what it's like to have a receiver, running back, and a quarterback that are elite on the same page in San Diego. So maybe that can translate here. But, I mean, the offensive numbers weren't really there. So I'm kind of caught between that. And then Brian Johnson, I'm like, he had it down here in Philadelphia. But again, like, these are all one-year guys that their team didn't do as well the previous year. And they're trying to reestablish something, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The difference, so Brian Johnson, just for anybody who didn't see the news, he was the offensive coordinator this past season for the Eagles, got promoted when Shane Steichen left last year to go be the head coach in Indianapolis with the Colts. And Johnson was there. It was kind of him and Steichen were the ones working together, and they both got credited for the MVP development of Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. And I would still say at the beginning of the season, I felt like the Philadelphia Eagles offense wasn't terrible. Like, you could tell they were missing something. And I think Shane Steichen, obviously there was a lot there because what he went to Indianapolis to do, it transferred with him. But I don't know. I think Brian Johnson must have some sort of pedigree that people are after because he has also interviewed, I think it was the Falcons and the Panthers and the Titans for their head coaching positions already. Now, I don't think he'll get any of those. Obviously, he's not getting the Tennessee one, but he has been interviewed for a head coaching spot already this year.
Yeah, I mean, realistically with the Eagles, I don't want to get too much into them, but I mean, ultimately, what did people expect? Those guys that lose the Super Bowl, how many of them really return to the Super Bowl or return to form? They generally have a down year. Maybe he took the hit for that down year, and the defensive coordinator as well, although that tackling in the last game against the Bucs was awful and horrendous. That's probably why the D coordinator is there. But those guys kind of taking the blame, and that's where it is with that guy. So maybe it might be a diamond in the rough if we get him.
Yeah. You never know. And I just, before we'll kind of wrap up this quick news in here real quick, but I just kind of get the feeling that the Browns are doing due diligence. They're bringing in a bunch of different guys that they probably have different levels of interest in. They're not bringing anybody just for the hell of it, but they're looking at these guys, and honestly, they're in a great position because Kevin Stefanski, at the end of the day, he has been acting primarily as the OC, the lead OC, I would say, with Alex Van Pelt here. He's been the play caller. So at the end of the day, if the Browns don't find anybody that they love, you know what I mean? Then they just kind of figure out, okay, which guy do we feel is the best fit to help us develop our players? He doesn't necessarily have to be the play caller or the lead guy in the offensive system. Kevin can still do that. So there's a nice fallback that, while we would like to see some offensive adjustments, some updates, some modernization, the offense is not terrible. You know what I mean? And Kevin's a hell of a play caller. So I don't know. I just think the Browns are in a great position to, pick and choose and be selective here.
And when you're hiring more elite or higher end positions, even in a company, you're always looking to gain something out of that interview and learn something.
Right.
And they're probably looking for some kind of philosophies, seeing where other teams are going, and that may or may not count in these interviews, but that's a point of hiring or interviewing more than one person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. And, here this first week or so, I mean, they've got they had Dickerson, they had Ken Dorsey, they had Johnson, and now Moore, and I'm sure there will be more to come. So stay tuned. We will, we'll keep you guys updated on everything that's going on with the coaching hires for the Browns. What's up, Browns fans in Ohio? If you haven't signed up for Caesar Sportsbook yet, now is the perfect time to do so with the NFL playoffs underway. New customers will get their first bet on Caesars up to $1,000 when signing up with our promo code DAWGS1000. That means if your first bet loses, you will get your full wager returned as a bonus bet up to $1,000. Caesars offers daily profit boosts as well as Caesars rewards credits on every wager, which can be redeemed for bonuses, sports tickets, and other VIP experiences. If you're ready to join Caesar Sportsbook, go download the app and register with our promo code DAWGS1000 to make sure your first bet is covered. Offer is only available for new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in Ohio. Please gamble responsibly. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you can qualify. So we will go ahead and move into the Andrew Berry press conference. Didn't talk about it earlier this week. There was other things going on, but I really think it's a good idea to dive into what he was saying in this press conference. So I think we'll just go chronologically through his statements and everything. And then if there's anything that I'm missing, just stop me and say it. But he kind of talked in the beginning. I thought it was really cool. He didn't take questions right away. He opened by talking about his buddy, general manager Brad Holmes in Detroit, and talking about how cool it is watching the Lions host these playoff games. The last two games were in Detroit. And he just said this, it gets me thinking about what's it going to be like when we host, not if, when we host a playoff game here in Cleveland. And he said the closest thing I can go to in my experience here that it would be like is that Thursday night game against the Jets in the whiteout jerseys when the crowd was electric, the energy, the atmosphere. It was playoff atmosphere because we win that game. We essentially clinched the playoff spot, the number 5 seed, which we did. And I just thought it was cool that he opened up talking about that.
Yeah, and that was a huge part. Like, I was there at the game, and it was an amazing experience. We knew that, like you said, we knew that we were going to clinch something, we were winning, but it was the buy-in from the players that he was really getting it. Everybody was bought in, and it kind of goes to the season. What he kind of said before that, when he was talking about Tom Telesco, and it was his first hire, he ultimately said, like, your team had every reason to give up.
Yeah.
They didn't. They were bought in, and it gets into what later he describes into like a growth mindset where he didn't give in to the failures, and he learned and he carried and he kind of fought through it. And I really liked how he started that off. And also, it starts off with a great memory. It sets the tone for the conference. I thought the conference was a little bit more up and robust than it usually is. And people didn't really want to fire into those hard questions right away. So it gave him a bit of a buffer zone as well.
Yeah, definitely. He moved into then, he started talking about, or I think he was asking about Kevin Stefanski. And well, here, I'll just play this clip real quick and then we can talk about it.
Kevin, the way that he was able to lead and manage through challenges and adversity this year was absolutely phenomenal. And we have a smart, adaptable, emotionally intelligent leader who, the crazy part is he's not even close to his ceiling. And this is a guy who hopefully in the next month should, earn his, second Coach of the Year award in his first 4 years as a head coach. And I know that our organization is in really good hands, both now and for the foreseeable future with him.
So I thought that was really high praise for Kevin Stefanski. I've seen this on Twitter too. Anybody who out there is screaming the Browns need to fire Kevin Stefanski, there's your GM. And nothing about what he just said indicates that the Browns are doing, or in any mindset, to move on from Kevin. They're going to be extending him soon, I'm pretty sure.
Well, the funny thing is that you said is the emotional intelligence, right? You're talking about these people that want to fire. They clearly have no emotional intelligence, right? Because you need to understand your own emotions and that of others, and you're not understanding what's going on with the Browns right now. So one of the key points to it is self-awareness. If you don't know, and self-regulation. Find out what's going on and then make a comment. That's what I would say. I would 100% agree with you, though. The positivity and the praise, it tells me that there will be an extension. Who knows when it's going to be? I mean, ultimately, if they didn't like what he was doing, he's got a year left on his deal, correct?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, he's got a big hand in these hires, and he's developing for the future. And they're talking about their goal and what's aligning for the future. And that's what getting back into the Lions thing. The Lions have a methodical way that they went about things. Andrew Berry understands his friends, and they're going to be rolling in that same way. And it looks like Kevin Stefanski and his emotional intelligence and his growth mindset is going to be part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just to kind of jump ahead while we're talking about Kevin, I'll just mention later on at one point he talked about Kevin's continued growth, or he was asked about that, and he called Kevin Stefanski, quote, the best of us. He said Kevin's authenticity is what helps him be a great leader for the team, somebody people like to follow. I mean, he talked about one of his favorite coaches in the NFL, and the progression of that coach is Andy Reid. He said, I love looking at what Andy Reid did in Philadelphia years and years ago to what he's doing now in Kansas City, and the way he's grown and developed and matured and adapted to the NFL game and just perfected his head coaching abilities. And he said, that's Kevin. And I thought that was huge praise.
Yeah, and that has to go through with, like, Andy Reid was a West Coast guy, and now he has the West Coast because he still sets up the run with the pass, right? He runs a lot less, but he goes, okay, well, this RPO game is working, so he works elements of that. And then if you watch NFL quarterback, what did he do? He did the old Freddie Kitchens thing before he stopped doing it when he was actually hired as a head coach. He listened to his players. They make plays. I didn't like seeing the ring around the rosy play, but all the players were hyped. They got into the play. They did probably whatever they needed to do to get that play to happen. And so he's got the buy-in. And it's exactly what he was saying. He understands the emotions of his players, Andy Reid that is, and he's getting their buy-in. That's what Kevin Stefanski is doing, and I know I keep hitting the hammer on the nail there with the emotional intelligence, but it's huge, and it's something that I've always looked at when I'm hiring people. So I'm super motivated that they're doing this.
Yeah, me too. So then the next thing I believe that he was asked about was the depth at the quarterback position, how much emphasis they're putting on quarterback considering the injuries and the way things played out this year. And my takeaway from that whole portion of the press conference was that Andrew Berry did say that we'll probably be carrying 3 quarterbacks moving forward. Later on, then, he was asked to clarify that. Somebody said, did you mean 3 active quarterbacks, like 3 guys on the active roster, or 2 guys and then 1 on the practice squad? Barry said that's going to depend on who those guys are that we end up with on the team, but he's not opposed to having 3 on the active roster, which the last couple of years it's been 2.
Yeah, I mean, to go as Flacco, I mean, obviously that'll be an important question. Everybody wants to know that answer. Ultimately, based on the way he played and his popularity, he probably played himself into a contract that's not going to be reasonable for the Browns. I would be very weary of someone that coming in at 38 and they just turned 39 and had the number of interceptions and put at least 10 points on the board for the other team, right? Now, he was thrown into action, given a full season, off season. Maybe that'll be remedied, but that's kind of the reason why some coaches aren't here anymore either. But I don't think, if you're in the mindset that you think Joe Flacco could last 17 games, I don't think that's going to be realistic either. So it would have to be at a running or at the backup position, and he may have earned himself or talked somebody into that starting position, or maybe he talked himself into that, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a narrative where he sides with a team, and one of those teams, maybe in the mid drafting range of 10 to 20, has a guy that's a bit of a project, and he starts for 10 games. That's the most realistic scenario that I see for him. Do I want to see him do it as amazing as he did last year? Yes, but I feel like if Deshaun Watson had those same stats, we'd be crying about it right now.
We definitely would be. Those turnovers were extremely high, and we talked about that every week, as the season was progressing. They started talking about Joe Flacco. Andrew Berry said definitely not opposed to having him back, but it's just got to make sense for both sides, pretty much alluding to everything you just said. And then I thought it was funny, Tony Grossi, who I think Tony can be a kind of a tool sometimes, and he asked Barry how much consideration the team would give to having Joe Flacco back, considering that he played at a high level, he took the team on a playoff run versus Deshaun. And just the way he was versus Deshaun, as if Deshaun's some POS crap, lower tier quarterback. And he said how much consideration they'd have toward division or polarity in the locker room. And it's pretty short. I'll just play what Barry said.
Zero consideration. Zero considerations because of how both individuals are. It's not a concern internally at all.
So basically he's just saying, look, Joe and Deshaun are professionals. They both know their roles. If they're both on this team, they understand how this goes. No concern.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There would be no concern. I mean, the scenario that every Browns fan would love is obviously they come to some kind of agreement. But like I said earlier, Joe Flacco priced himself out. The Browns are probably willing.
Yeah, well, and we'll see how the offseason goes. If another team's not really willing to sign him on to be a starter, I mean, I don't think he'll go anywhere else to be a backup. I think if he's relegated to a backup only options, then he'll be more interested in coming back to Cleveland, obviously. But if there is a starting position available, which we're just going to have to see how things shake out over the next few months. One thing that came up next, and it was a theme that progressed on and on and on throughout the conference. Andrew Berry was not answering any coaching questions. He was not answering questions about guys being fired, guys being interviewed, what they're looking for in new hires. He passed all those off. He said, we'll talk about coaches when all the positions are filled. But the one thing he did say is that play calling duties will be 100% Kevin's decision. He said that he thinks the team thinks that Kevin does a good job with play calling, so that's up to Kevin if he wants to give those up or share them or keep them.
Yeah, so my understanding with Kevin is that while he calls the plays into the headset, It's a collaborative effort between AVP and Callahan. AVP is gone, and I don't know if the other position coaches had any say. All we know is that O'Shea's still there, and he has called plays previous.
Maybe because he was an OC.
Well.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's a collaboration that he's looking for, great. Ultimately, I would like to see it just hand it over for Biago. So just if he can do that, I think a lot of fans would be happy. But they definitely do need an upgrade at that offense. You said it previously on another show. What were you? You and Blake were with somebody. I can't remember who it was. The offense was kind of stale, and you can figure it out. And you can see that with the Texans. I think it's back in the OBR report.
Yep.
And,
Jake Burns.
Yeah. Yeah. And so basically, you can see that they need an upgrade. And I think with the fires of Reese and Staley, that's kind of where it's coming on. That's why I don't want to get into it too much. So I kind of hit into it now. Like they've called plays, or get in the room replacement called. I mean, if you look at Reese, he's a quarterback coach. Is that correct?
What they hired him? He's the tight end coach.
Yeah, tight end coach, right? He was an offensive coordinator for Alabama last year. I'd say they did pretty okay.
And he was the OC for Notre Dame for 3 years.
Yeah. So he said, or Bo Bishop put it on Cleveland Browns Daily. It was Laurinaitis said he was one of the best play callers in the game. I was referring to the NCAA.
Okay.
And if you're the best play caller there, you might be able to translate something to the Cleveland Browns as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like that's exactly what they're doing is they're getting a lot of guys with experience with different styles of offense, with different concepts. They're going to bring them in, guys that have called plays before. I think the people that they're going to put in the room, the collaborative effort for the offense next season is going to be really cool. That's what they're gearing toward.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of a modern offense, and hopefully it'll take advantage of what John does really well, because it was clear when you're watching the Browns with Joe Flacco that Stefanski wants someone who can stand in the pocket, pass the ball, and that's what Deshaun maybe wants to aspire to do to extend his career, but he's not right there now, and we want him to take advantage of his God-given athletic ability as well.
I don't know, man. Stump Mitchell sure seemed to think that Deshaun Watson can do exactly or more what Joe Flacco is doing. Which did you see we won't talk about it, but did you see the Stump interview?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't see it, and maybe they're kind of like pigeonhole him into a position that maybe he can do better. But I felt like the offense did flow a little bit more, even though there's way more points on the board on turnovers when Flacco was in there. But maybe he's throwing the windows and Watson's throwing his spaces, like who knows, right? Or throwing to open guys versus windows like Flacco was.
Yeah. I'm not real sure. I just know that Stump said that Kevin was essentially trying to alter his play calling style to fit to be different for Deshaun. And then he's like, then you saw what he did with Joe, and he was much more comfortable calling plays with Joe. And he said, that's what Deshaun can do. He said, Deshaun's a passer first and foremost, and he can do those things. And he said, if Kevin just calls the same style offense for Deshaun that he called for Joe, he'd be fine. And I thought, well, that's interesting coming from a guy who was in the building, who's been on the coaching staff at practice, at training. He's been there the entire time. So that insight was interesting. This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Browns fans, February is almost here, and that means it's time to start thinking about that upcoming holiday and making plans to share a meal with someone special. That's right, it's almost Super Bowl Sunday, and for those of us also celebrating Valentine's Day, Omaha Steaks has you covered for it all. For a limited time, listeners of this show can go to omahasteaks.com/Dawgs, DAWGS, and receive 4 free air-chilled boneless chicken breasts and 4 free rich, juicy boneless pork chops with your order. So now is the perfect time to plan ahead for the big holidays coming in February. Load up for the Super Bowl and for Valentine's Day with Omaha's selection of steaks, including the butcher's cut filet mignons, bacon wrapped filet mignons, the top sirloin steaks. Those are my favorite, but these steaks are all awesome. Throw in some Omaha steak burgers, Jumbo Frank's seafood, ready-to-eat meals, desserts. Oh my goodness, you have to get the caramel apple tartlets for Valentine's Day. Whatever you do, get those. Just make sure you head to omahasteaks.com/dogs. Get those 8 additional free items added to your order, the 4 boneless chicken breasts and the 4 pork chops. Trust me, this stuff is totally worth it. You will wow everybody at your Super Bowl parties, and you will wow your special somebody on Valentine's Day. Mark my words. Get to omahasteaks.com/dogs right now. Score those 8 free additional items with your order. There's nothing better than buying great food and getting free great food along with it. omahasteaks.com/dogs. Minimum purchase may apply. Speaking about Deshaun, Kevin, or I keep saying Kevin, Andrew Berry was asked about Deshaun's recovery, so this was his answer about that.
We feel really good about the recovery. We don't. There's nothing that would suggest that there should be some type of limitation or anything like that moving forward.
So he was asked, about the timeline. He said he's definitely, on track in his recovery. He said maybe even a little ahead of schedule. He said, I hesitate to say that just because it's still early in the recovery, but the fact that he's even mentioning that he could be ahead of schedule was good. And then Mary Kay was asking him, do you have any other quarterbacks or players that have suffered a similar injury to this with the broken glenoid? And, what has their recovery been like? And that was basically his answer of, we really don't anticipate any limitations whatsoever.
Yeah, that's great. That's great news to hear. I mean, that's what we want to hear. I mean, ultimately making the trade for Deshaun Watson, first and foremost, we thought, well, we got this guy, bit of baggage. Mike missed 6 games. Well, it ended up as 11 games. So now people are starting to be a little ripped off, right? And then we got so hyped up at the extended time off. I mean, it looked as good. He was 3-3 as a starter. So people are like kind of getting a little angry, right? And then now he goes through a full off season. We go, hey, he's going to be there. And he was okay. But now we're kind of hearing through stuff, and you just enlighten me a little bit. Well, maybe the offensive wasn't all great for him. But the injury came along, and now people feel more ripped off. And then it comes to like not controlling your emotions. Your emotional intelligence is not high. And you're saying, well, he doesn't want to play because
right.
Don't want to eat the Browns and so on and so forth, right? So Blake said it a lot. He's got to play next year. Like, he's got to play a full season.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever he can do, just slide. Don't run into people. Stop running into, Patrick Queen and all of these guys. Not going to take them all down. Longevity is the key, man.
Yes. And, hopefully these players learn when these kinds of things happen. Hopefully, Deshaun has learned from the injury and said, I do need to protect myself a little better. For the people that are not emotionally intelligent and can't handle having Deshaun Watson be the quarterback for the Browns, this next clip is going to drive you crazy.
When we made the trade, we really looked at it as, hey, this is something that we'll evaluate like a 10-year time horizon because these guys play. Obviously, we want him on the field, more often than he's been. He can't help the shoulder injuries this year, but we're really pleased with him. He's very talented. He's very hardworking. He's adaptable, and we really feel good about him moving forward.
So there you go. Everybody talking about the contract. I can't wait to get him out of here in 2 or 3 years. Andrew Berry is just straight up there saying, look, whenever we went into this whole thing, we looked at this at like a 10-year window, not a 5-year. The contract's 5-year, but that's where this contract then keeps, there's going to be restructures, void years, things that Andrew Berry knows he can do with Deshaun Watson's contract. And I think he's going to be the quarterback for the Browns for a long time unless something absolutely crazy happens. And I think that's a good thing. I think Deshaun is very capable of being a good quarterback. He's shown it before. I have more confidence, I guess, than a lot of people that he'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just should listen to the internet. The other thing is what I like to hear about what you're saying is the stability, right? Already now that we've had stability with the coaches, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like they said at the press conference and how they kicked it off, there's going to be some hard decisions made. And ultimately, I think if you take a look, I don't have the stats in front of me, but the offense has slightly gone down every single year. And while maybe the rankings were about the same as last year or maybe a little bit higher, you can't have 39 turnovers. Somebody is going to be, job's going to be on the line for that, right? And it's just all the penalties, the turnovers. Like they should be thinking, man, we're lucky to be where we are. And that stability needs to come with a quarterback. And unfortunately, based on the situation that we're talking about, between the suspension that was overdrawn and the injury, you don't got that stability yet. In the next 3 years, let's get there.
Yeah, let's get there. You're just giving me good segues here, Kenny. You were doing awesome work. Talking about stability, there has been nothing more stable to the Browns over the past 4 or 5 years than Nick Chubb. And the discussion moved into Nick Chubb and his recovery and his future. And here's just a quick clip from that.
You would have never guessed that Nick was out for the season with how he operated within the building. I mean, it was like he was doing 2-a-day practices for rehab. I can say for myself, no one in the organization, I understand our family. Nobody wants to see, that carry in Pittsburgh, be the last time he carries the ball for the Cleveland Browns. And, obviously there are things that we'll have to work through, but, that would not be our intention as well. We obviously will work to keep him on the team.
So, those comments earlier in the week about, we're going to do everything we can to keep Nick Chubb on the team, and then hiring Duce Staley, or more, I guess the better way to put it is Duce Staley choosing the Browns because he had offers from the Browns and the Jets, and he was kind of deciding between the two, and he picked Cleveland. So that all kind of points to they're confident Nick Chubb will be here for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, I that's what I hope. I mean, obviously, when I hear a lot of positivity, and you hear that kind of like, oh, we got to do something about that contract. Hopefully the contract situation is like Jimmy just says, I'll pay it because I love Cleveland Browns fans, and I'll restructure that and pay him right out in cash. So I'll be like, yes, Jim, you are the best man ever. Please do that. We want to see Nick thrive, and like he said, we do not want to see that last carry in Pittsburgh going down the way he did.
No.
If anybody can get out of it, man, it seems like Nick Chubb can. And please be that happen. I'm hoping maybe that you see something in Pierre Strong and or Ford as well. But Ford isn't a slouch in the passing game, and I don't think Kareem's coming back after the combat. It's just practice.
Yeah.
But, we need guys, though, that we can depend. One thing that we could depend on Kareem is pass blocking. And the guys that we have on the team right now, I cannot depend on.
No.
Even Nick Chubb. I mean, you want Nick Chubb pass blocking for you? Or you want Kareem Hunt, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And, free agency, the draft, I think the Browns are adding to that running back room regardless. But we said it earlier in the week, and if you're listening to this and wondering, well, why are they even having this discussion about Nick Chubb? Of course he's going to be here. Well, Nick Chubb's contract, for 2024, he is owed against the cap $15.8 million. That's a lot of money for a running back. I believe it's either the third or fourth highest running back contract in the NFL right now. He's coming off that injury, and if he has only got a $4 million dead cap pre-June 1st. So if he was cut, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying what the numbers show. To cut him pre-June 1st, they would save almost $12 million against the cap.
Yeah, and I mean, there's people crying for new receivers. There's people, we got to replace Zadarius Smith. We're not paying him, right?
Yeah.
So there's all of these other needs that are coming in for a guy that's going to play. Is he going to play half the season? 2/3 of the season?
Right.
I think he's playing the first month. But I'm not a doctor. I don't know. The injury is bad and to rehab. And if anyone could probably start the season, he could. But it's for the price that he's worth, the variable, it's tough to say. They're going to pay that after your deadline.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully they get that all worked out. They get it restructured so that way Nick Chubb is back sometime whenever he's healthy next year, ready to go. He's in Cleveland and playing for the Browns. That's where we want him. So was there anything else so far through the press conference that I've missed that you wanted to mention?
No, I mean, I liked what he had to say. Andrew Berry is going to keep everything tight. He's not going to divulge too much information. Going to paint a nice rosy red picture. And he was very straight with some things about Nick Chubb's contract.
Mm-hmm.
He was straight with where Deshaun is. Obviously, he'd be open to Flacco, but it has to be at the right price. We're going to keep 3 quarterbacks. How that's going to happen? There's another one that comes up other than DTR, because DTR will probably be taking it on a practice squad. That was something that he mentioned. And then it's the overall outlook. Like they are hiring in mind with the ability to win a Super Bowl. And clearly, based on the moves that were made in the coaching staff, there was guys on that coaching staff that didn't have that vision, and that was the weak part of that team, the offense. They were let go, have some new blood, and then the other thing that he said, like every year, how often does your roster turn over? It turns over a third, no matter what. Right?
Yep.
So you got to get used to that. They live by that motto or that mantra, and they're going to move it to next year, because they're not going to say, "Oh, we were the team that ended this season." With up to the Jets game and the 2 lows, we're a whole new team. Where's this whole new team going to take us? That's how they're going to do it. So I liked how he laid that down. It's not going to be enough for some people, but he's not going to tell you how their real business operations are going to go. So he fluffed it right.
Yeah, he did. I mean, what he said, and that was more toward the end of the conference, but I like what he said. Basically, you never just run it back in the NFL. He said every year's its own year. That's just the nature of the business, the sport. Each season, it's a different group of guys altogether than the one before every year. So, and we'll get into kind of at the end what he was talking about with Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller in that wild card game. But I want to talk about Myles Garrett real quick, because Daryl Reuter, who I'm not a big fan of his either. I think he's kind of, I don't know, some of the stuff he says and asks kind of bothers me, but me and Blake actually ate lunch with him at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. We were up there back in the press room. Yeah. But so he was asking about the drop off in Myles Garrett's production over that last quarter of the season after the injury and all that stuff. And I'll play Andrew Berry's answer here, but it's pretty good. He pretty much said what we've been saying on this show for a while now, ever since the injury, is sack numbers just aren't the end all be all. But here's the clip.
I think regardless of how much he played through, he played at a really high level for us down the stretch. So, he does a really good job of managing his body. He's very, very proactive. He does a lot that is not visible in the building. He's a lot outside the building to make sure that he can perform at a peak level. And he's always done that. That's not just even a recent occurrence. But, probably the larger point for me is I know the focus is on sack numbers, but the reality of it is that really doesn't tell the whole story, or even enough of the story, to be honest, Daryl. He's the defensive player of the year. So
that's what I like there at the end. He had to throw that in. He's like, hey, he's the defensive player of the year. So in my book, and yeah.
No, if anybody subs him out or you put him on any other team, there will be a tremendous increase in that defense if he was on another team, and there'd be a tremendous decrease if he was not on ours.
Yeah, for sure, man. And, yes, the lack of counting stats and everything, and, no quarterback hits and sacks and stuff like that in the games. Yeah, it was frustrating because you expect more out of Myles. That injury clearly affected him, because for the first however many, 10 games of the season, he dominated. I mean, he was a monster. Injury happened, complete 180 in terms of the production on the stat sheet. And so obviously the injury had a big effect there. It sucks, but it is what it is. Myles Garrett still fought through it, still played. At the time that the injury happened, in Denver, we all thought, oh, he's probably done for the season. The way all of our other players are going on IR every week, boom, 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 just dropping like flies. We thought, well, yep, he's next. But no, he fought through it, and he finished out the season. So kudos to Myles, and I really do hope he wins that Defensive Player of the Year award.
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome for the Cleveland Browns. It would be like the first major award that we had since Brian Sipe won MVP in 1980.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
That's the last time. Like, I know we've got some Rookie of the Year and Coach of the Year, but I'm talking like major award.
Mm-hmm.
MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Those are like the top two. Let's get one. Let's get one for the Browns, man. Come on.
Yeah, well, we might have two. We might have Defensive Player of the Year and Coach of the Year. So I think they said February 8th or something, I think was when they announced those. So we got a few weeks yet. Hey, Browns fans, this is your daily mental health check. If you're struggling with anything, it does not matter. It doesn't matter how big it might seem or how small you might think it is. If it's bothering you, if something's on your mind, if something is stopping you from living the fullest life you can live right now, you need to do something about it. And talk therapy can be a great avenue to get yourself back on track. I'm talking about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Trust me, guys, I've been there. I know how uncomfortable it can be to go to somebody's office, sit in a chair, and talk about feelings. It's not easy to do. And what BetterHelp is great for is giving you the options to communicate with a specialist, a therapist, a trained person in a way that is comfortable for you. You can text message, you can give them a phone call, voice chat, face chat, like a FaceTime with your therapist. The options are just so much better, especially with how busy everybody is, and you're moving, you're on the go. You don't always have time to schedule these appointments and get to somebody's office. BetterHelp gives you so many more options to experience all the benefits of talk therapy. If you've even been thinking a little bit about trying it, it is worth a try. And again, like I've been saying, if it's not for you, just try it for like the first month and then you just cancel. It's okay. It's not for everybody, but like I've told you, if it is for you, it can change your life. BetterHelp, HELP.com/Dawgs, DAWGS, gets you 10% off your first month. You deserve to live the best life you can possibly live. And talk therapy could be that thing that helps you get past whatever it is you're dealing with right now. Head to BetterHelp.com/Dawgs to get 10% off that first month. So one of the last things we'll talk about here, was talking about the team moving forward and kind of building pieces and things in his mind that he thought, okay, I think we have something here and we can build off of this. So this was just a quick story he told about Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller in the wild card game against the Texans.
I remember, late in the game, so Joel had gone into the locker room with a pretty significant high ankle sprain, and the game, for all intents and purposes, was really kind of out of hand late. And Joe came back onto the field despite the fact that it shouldn't have been something that he really was playing through, just because he wanted to be out there with his teammates. Later in that fourth quarter, Wyatt goes down. He stings his calf again, and I see him go down. I see him hobble up again. We might have been down 30 points at that point. And he gets up again. I'm like, he really should come out. Does everything he can to will and stay in the game. That's pretty cool, because here are two of our veteran players. There's really nothing to play for competitively because we really don't have enough time to come back. But they realized in that moment that was the last time that specific group was going to play together forever. That visual is going to be the thing that motivates me this offseason to do everything that I can to improve the team and make sure that we're in a position playing deep into the playoffs next year.
I thought that was a great story he told, and I love Andrew Berry. I love the mindset of this front office and him leading the charge with everything. It's all about championship, man.
Yeah, I mean, they both speak very eloquent, and I appreciate them as well. I mean, when you come from Freddie Kitchen and Dorsey, I mean, they're a lot of bravado and no backup, right? And
yeah,
they were funny to listen to. A lot of people like that.
That's true. It was entertaining.
The story though, when I was down in Edmonton, and it was a Grey Cup, and a similar thing. Red Blacks made the Grey Cup. They lost to Calgary. And at the end of the game, we all went out because my buddy was part of the team as a video coordinator. We all went out, and all the guys, I thought they'd be more sad, but it was kind of like they knew this was the last time they were going to be together because a lot of guys were under contract. And it goes to that 1/3 fact that we gave out, when there was going to be back. And everyone was taking pictures. They were sad, and they're obviously they're sad in the moment when they lose the game, right? And I'm sure they were too, but you can really tell with the camaraderie and the guys that we have as core players, and Wyatt and Joel are both of them. They're going to bring that into next year, which is going to be fantastic. And that's going to keep coming along, where we've seen that in other franchises in our own division have that. And it keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. And so let that roll, please, because we want that. And I appreciated that story as well.
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns are so different now than what they've been in the past, because that story, just like you said, it's the last time this specific group of guys are ever going to be together, and they know that, and it's painful. Like it sucks because they loved their teammates, they loved this season so much, and that's what we've been missing in Cleveland. We've been missing having that sort of culture where it is a team, it's a brotherhood. You want to be here, you want to play with the guys that are on this team, you want to play for these coaches, this front office, this organization. And what they're doing right now in Cleveland is fantastic. Has me so excited for this offseason and the 2024 season when it gets here.
Yeah, you can see it with Stefanski and the one problem child that we had was David Njoku, right?
Yeah.
He was down. He didn't like the coaches. He wanted to be traded, and he loves Stefanski and Stefanski loves him.
Yep.
And it goes back to the growth mindset and the emotional intelligence. He understands his own emotions, keeps them in check, and he understands his players' emotions and keeps them in check. And I think in a game like football, where you got to get emotionally charged up before your week-long of practice game, you got to know how to manage emotions. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in any sport, but I think the degree of emotions are higher in this one. And it's a great to hear the Browns really getting into that emotional intelligence and the growth mindset.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And just kind of my one last takeaway from the conference for me, Andrew Berry had a quote that I don't know if this is just his quote, he came up with this, or he pulled it from somewhere else, but I thought it was awesome. He said, because first of all, he was asked about his own growth development. How does he feel like he's grown, since he came in 2020 to now over 4 off seasons? And he said, experience is a hard teacher. You get the tests first and the lessons after. I was like, wow, that's I just thought that was pretty interesting. Like, you kind of have to go through the fire.
I've never heard that one before, but that's a good one. I do like how he was talking about, where is it? He basically keeps a diary. And I thought that spoke a lot about his own personal culture. And it gets back to what you're saying. It's like, well, he's learning, but he's writing it down, so he's not going to forget, And I don't know if other guys do that, but he definitely is making the right concessions to be successful based on what we're hearing.
Yeah, it seems like there's nobody in that organization, and this is key for any organization, for any company. This is key for church, family, anything in life. If anybody in that organization or family or whatever thinks that they're as good as they can ever be and they've arrived and they can't get any better, that's when you start to have problems. And from the top down, these guys all know that I might be doing a good job, but I can do better. There's things I've done wrong. There's things I'm still not doing right. I need to learn. I need to progress. It starts with AB. It goes to Kevin. And I think that's why these players love playing for Kevin and AB and these guys so much, because whenever you're a player or you're a worker and you look at your manager at your job and you're like, well, my manager messes up all the time and they know that, but they're constantly fixing their mistakes and getting better, and they don't think they're better than anybody else. They don't think they're perfect. It's just that human aspect that it's a lot easier to follow.
You own up to it, and a lot of times I think part of the culture is that you get paid. They're basically saying in the press conference, AB is like, he's got contract management of space, and it's their strategic advantage. And he's basically saying we do it better than anyone else. And if you don't get paid by us, someone else is going to pay you. So just get playing.
Yeah. And he definitely talked about I learned better from my mistakes. He said, bad signings, bad draft picks, bad trades. And, I'm sure he's thinking Austin Hooper, that didn't work out. He's probably thinking Anthony Schwartz. He's thinking, he's just thinking some of the moves that he's made since he's been here that just haven't panned out. And that's okay, because there's people on Twitter that think that there are apparently perfect GMs out there. There are not. I'll just tell you that right now. Everybody makes mistakes. And the best thing you can do is learn from it. And that's what he does. And man, is he good at his job.
Yeah, you can pull up the Kansas City draft pick from last year and our pick from last year. I guarantee you they didn't have 100% success rate, and we didn't have 100% success rate either.
Right.
The way it is.
That's the way it is.
I think we did pretty damn good without, first round picks with DeJuan Jones and Emerson. Those were unreal picks, and we could be lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, just kind of our takeaways from AB's press conference, end of the season, his talk with the reporters and everybody that he did earlier this week. Just good information, good stuff to hear and to kind of understand the mindset of the team from the front office as we move into, free agency's not too far off. The draft, I know it's crazy to think about, but April's not too far off. It's almost February, so we're going to be moving quick. So, Kenny, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with it, or did we cover all of it?
No, I think we covered everything, man. I'm happy with where they are. I'm happy where with Nick Chubb is. I'm happy where Deshaun Watson is. We just want to see more of them, and we want to see Nick get to where he is, and everything else will fall in line with the free agency and the draft. So let's see what's going on and listen to the Dawgs podcast, man. They'll keep you apprised.
That's right. We're going to have more stuff from Kenny throughout the offseason. Derek was on earlier this week. I'm doing more stuff. So there's just a lot of content coming out. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Tap the notification bell. You don't want to miss any of the new stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm actually putting together my own series of videos that's going to be called State of the Browns. I'm just going to go through each position group and talk about guys, from this 2023 that are going to be on the team in 2024, guys that won't be, contract situations, stats, what they did, all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for all of that as well. Kenny, really appreciate you jumping in here, talking about the press conference, and I'm just excited, man. This is a great time to be a Browns fan. It really is.
Oh, yeah. I always have a blast. I'm glad that we both got in on this, and I love being on, man. Love you, Dog Pack, guys. Woo, woo.
That's right. Love you, Dog Pack, and we will be back next week with more episodes, so stay tuned. Until then, go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dawgs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedawgspodcast.com.